5 days ago, I married the love of my life in a small and intimate ceremony. It was supposed to be a beautiful moment shared with both our families and a few close friends. But unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, my family didn't attend. To be more accurate, they could have attended. But as it turned out, taking a luxurious family vacation to Australia with my brother and his family was more important to them than my wedding day. The realization that a vacation mattered more than celebrating one of the most significant moments in my life was a revelation I wasn't ready for. My wife and I had been together for 6 years before tying the knot. We got engaged about 10 months ago and informed both of our families about the wedding date well in advance. 8 months to be exact, so they could keep their calendars clear. While the formal invitations went out only 4 weeks before the wedding, both my wife and I had repeatedly reminded our families about the date. Both families were supportive, and my parents reassured me they would be there for the ceremony. But what followed was something that still shakes me to my core. My relationship with my parents had always been strained, to say the least. My brother, who is 8 years older than me, was always the golden child in their eyes. Intelligent, talented, athletic, and basically everything I wasn't. Growing up, I was constantly overshadowed by his achievements, his success, and his natural charm. No matter how hard I tried, I could never compare to the image of perfection that my parents held for him. I was always the troublemaker, the one who couldn't measure up, and eventually I stopped trying. My brother never made things easy for me either. He was arrogant, cocky, and seemed to relish in tormenting me. I was a small kid, and his mockery, along with his friends' bullying, left deep scars. Whenever I tried to stand up for myself or complain to our parents, they dismissed me. My brother could do no wrong in their eyes, and I was always seen as the one in the wrong, no matter how unjust his treatment of me was. By the time I reached high school, years of pent-up resentment toward my brother had built up to a breaking point. I went out of my way to rebel and cause trouble, if only to be remembered for something. My brother, by then a successful young adult, was still the epitome of perfection in our family, constantly showing off his achievements. I reached my limit the day he made a snide comment about me being a disappointment. I lost it, and we fought, physically. The result? Both of us walked away with bruises, but I was finally able to give him the black eye he deserved. After the fight, my parents were furious with me, as expected. They didn't believe that my brother had instigated it, even though he had been taunting me for years. They never had and never would see my side. Our relationship cooled significantly after that incident, and things only improved slightly once I left for college. With some distance between us, we managed to keep in touch, but I never forgot the way they treated me as second best. Fast forward to the present. I invited my parents to my wedding despite all the bitterness and hurt from the past. I had no other family. My grandparents had passed away, and I wasn't close to any extended relatives. In the last decade, my parents had made some effort to mend things with me, and they frequently tried to convince me to reconcile with my brother. But I wasn't interested, and neither was he. I wasn't invited to his wedding 6 years ago, and I didn't care. When my parents suggested inviting him to my wedding, I flatly refused. I had no desire to see him, especially on such an important day. The holidays, where we were forced to be around each other, were already unbearable enough. My brother hadn't changed. He was still the same arrogant, insufferable person he always had been. We simply ignored each other's existence now, and I preferred it that way. Still, despite the strained relationship with my parents, I didn't expect them to choose a vacation with my brother over my wedding. I knew they had a soft spot for him, but their decision to prioritize his family over me was beyond disrespectful. 2 weeks before the wedding, my parents visited me to tell me that they couldn't attend because my brother had invited them on a family trip to Australia. Apparently, it was a work-related perk, an all-expenses-paid vacation that he had earned for impressing one of his clients. They explained that they couldn't postpone it, as my brother had already scheduled the time off. My parents, with no hesitation, asked me to postpone my wedding instead. I was speechless. They explained how much they were looking forward to spending time with their grandkids and how this vacation was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. My parents actually expected me to postpone my wedding, an event that my wife and I had been planning for months, because of a vacation. I wanted to argue, to tell them how hurtful and selfish they were being, but instead, I smiled and told them, "Okay, I'll wait." They left, completely oblivious to the sarcasm in my voice. When I spoke to my wife about it later that night, she was equally shocked. We both knew my parents favored my brother, but this was a new low, even for them. Without hesitation, we decided to go ahead with the wedding as planned, with or without them. They made their choice, and I was not going to let them ruin our day. So, 5 days ago, we got married. It was a beautiful ceremony, filled with love, joy, and the support of the people who truly mattered. We posted pictures of the wedding that evening, and as expected, my phone started blowing up almost immediately. My parents were furious. I didn't bother reading their messages until the next day. When I did, it was exactly what I had anticipated. They were disappointed in me, accusing me of betrayal, claiming they hadn't expected me to go through with it without them. I called them the next morning. I had a lot to say, and I knew they did too. They answered almost immediately, and the moment they picked up, they started shouting at me. According to them, they had never been more insulted in their lives. My parents were embarrassed, not because they missed their son's wedding, but because the rest of the family had questions about why they weren't there. It was typical of them to care more about what other people thought than how I felt. When they were done with their tirade, I finally spoke. I told them that I had no intention of waiting for them to return from their vacation. I knew they would never have skipped the trip with my brother, even if I had asked. I explained that I was tired of being cast aside, tired of being treated like an afterthought. I brought up everything from my childhood, how they had always favored my brother, and how they never believed me when I tried to tell them how much he bullied me. My parents, to their credit, didn't try to deny their favoritism this time. Instead, they shifted the blame onto me, claiming I had made things difficult for myself by always trying to stir up trouble. They accused me of being a troublemaker, seeking attention in the worst ways possible. They insisted that if I had been more honest with them, they would have declined the vacation and attended the wedding. According to them, they had only asked if I could postpone the wedding because they knew how much this trip meant to my brother and his family. That explanation felt like a slap in the face. I couldn't believe their audacity. I accused them of lying, of trying to cover up their mistake by pretending this was my fault. My parents responded by calling me immature, saying I still hadn't grown out of my rebellious phase and that I was more interested in being the victim than in making things right. The conversation ended with my mother crying, telling me how much I had hurt them by going through with the wedding without them. For the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. At first, I was sure I had done the right thing, but the more I thought about it, the less confident I became. Maybe my parents were right. Maybe I was to blame. Maybe my brother really hadn't known when my wedding was. And maybe I had overreacted. Then came the unexpected update.